All right, y'all, it's book talk time. If you have been around on theological YouTube, I'm sure you've seen lots of people recommend their favorite theological books or Christian books and all of those kind of things, and I wanted to do it myself. This is not necessarily in the same vein because I think that there's a lot of deep theological books that I've read for my schooling and stuff during my graduate theology program. I read a lot of deep theological literature, and there's so much stuff that people are going to reference, like church fathers and stuff like that for reading, but I want to stick a little bit more in the popular vein. And so these book recommendations are not going to be necessarily these big historic books of the same type that you might find in like my recommended theology reads, like must reads for all people, and you'll see some very heavy books in there. I'm thinking I might do something like that in the future, recommendations for going deeper into theology. But what I want to talk about today are 3 books that can change your Christian worldview, change how you think about your faith and how you understand your faith, but are also very accessible for all readers of all kinds, and are books that I actually think every Christian should read. And so one of them is sort of more doctrinally theological than the other. One is sort of fiction and one is conceptual. And I think you probably have heard of most of them, but I want to make the recommendation that if you hadn't written one of these books, if you have not read these books, I would recommend all of them to you to be read. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start with what I think is probably the most basic one that is going to be recommended to you by every person ever. And there really is a reason for that. Like, do not avoid this book just because everybody tells you to read it and you think it's overdone, because it simply is not. And that is, of course, C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. Can you see this if I give you focus on it? C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. This book is masterfully done. It is essentially what some people will tell you is that we don't even need it anymore because of how well done it is. It is the overall concept of Christianity and how the overall concept of Christianity is needed. It's sort of C.S. Lewis's apology for Christianity. Like, this is what Christianity means. This is what it does. This is its function and its purpose and why it's true, why it rings true. And this is just sort of a great introduction to thinking about Christianity in a theological mindset. So if you've never read anything even remotely theological, maybe you've read something like The Case for Christ, which is a lot of people's sort of introductory level, like this is your introduction to apologetics, which is like defending the resurrection of Christ. If you've read something like that and you want to go theologically deeper, then Mere Christianity is the read. It's just the best. This book has so much packed into it because Lewis, as all Christians are going to recommend to you, is just such a brilliant expositor. The way that he writes is so detailed and detail-oriented, and what he says is so deep and thoughtful. In each sentence, there are so many things packed in here, and then he makes use of, I could talk about C.S. Lewis all day. He's so worth talking about because he's, I think, brilliant, because he states things very simply, and he uses these gorgeous analogies and metaphors and symbols. When he's conveying a point, he will illustrate these through stories of things like metaphors and symbols and make these amazing analogies that are so simple but pack into them so much meaning that they're very similar to like Jesus's parables. And so this is a great resource to thinking about how humans should think about Christianity and how they think about their faith, and being able to go kind of a degree deeper into the philosophy and the theology of their faith. So I will never stop recommending Mere Christianity to every person ever, because I think you should read it multiple times. It's just so brilliant. It's so well written. It's so fun. Lewis is such a fun author to read, and this is a short and easy book that packs into it so much stuff. And so Mere Christianity will always be recommended. I always recommend it. Another book that's sort of, I don't know, you could say in the same vein. What you're going to tell from this is that I really like my lighthearted Christian authors, and I prefer Christianity to be accessed in these really philosophical, beautifully simple ways. I love beautiful simplicity. I think it is one of the greatest things about the gospel, that it is so beautifully simple. And that is what leads me to liking these books that I like. And so my next book, which is one of my favorite books of all time, I mean, Mere Christianity as well, is these 3 books could easily be maybe my favorite books. No, I mean, I love a lot of fiction, and I'm not including all of the fiction that I love in this category. So this book is kind of fiction. I guess it is technically fiction, but at the same time, it is the story of every Christian person. And this is John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress. The Pilgrim's Progress is a fiction book written by the Puritan John Bunyan. And the Puritans have so much beautiful poetry and literature from their time period that it's super worth getting into, reading their ideas. But The Pilgrim's Progress is just the best of that concept. It's such a brilliantly fun book. If you love, some people don't like, what would you call like really simple ideas, like ideas made into their simplest form. I love that. To me, it's like anti-philosophy. When you're reading something like Thomas Aquinas's Metaphysics, it's so deep and so much that you feel like you're getting lost and you can't wrap your head around it. This is the opposite. It's like, have you ever taken a thought and made it as simple as possible? And have you ever taken the idea of what you're thinking and boiled it down literally into a simple fictional story to the point where, like, this is where you kind of get this famous idea of like characters. Think of Inside Out, almost like Disney's or Pixar's movie, whoever the heck made that movie. Like, you literally have an emotion named sadness who's a character. Like that is the Pilgrim's Progress. The Pilgrim's Progress is the original idea of this. The main character is called Christian, and he is a pilgrim going on his journey where he meets people like worldly wise man, and he meets evangelist, and he meets interpreter, and he meets talkative, and he meets all of these people who are just complete anthropomorphizations of ideas. They are like an idea embodied in a person, and it is fun and interesting read that is sort of just like how a Christian should deal with each of these situations. The best part in the book, there's so many good parts, but one of my favorite parts in the book is when they go to the Vanity Fair, which is where the name Vanity Fair comes from, which is sort of where they go to this festival that is just a celebration of all the meaningless things of life. And it is so good. It's such a strong reflection on what this time is for us as our culture in the West is literally just a vanity fair, just a celebration of money and sex and physicality and fleshly lusts and all of these things. And this is just a masterful illustration of what a Christian's journey looks like. This is one of the funnest books I've ever read. I enjoyed it so much, and I would recommend this to every person. If you can't read, if you want it just upgraded from Old English as well, this edition that I have here is called the New Pilgrim's Progress, as you can see up here. And it is simply the exact same prose and translation, except that they have taken your Old English, which would just be like King James words, out of there. So instead of hath, you would have has, essentially, or goeth, or thinketh, those kind of things. They've just taken, it's just slightly updated into modern prose. And that update was done in the 1980s. The Pilgrim's Progress was written in the 1600s. The update was done in the 1980s by Moody Bible Institute. This is Warren Wiersbe's translation, and I really love it. It's not really a translation. Like, it just can't be, like, it's a revision. It's literally just the exact same as the regular Pilgrim's Progress, but the old words are updated into new words. So it is not a translation. It is simply a revision, because the originals were just written in Old English, old type of English. Either way, the Pilgrim's Progress is an absolutely amazing book. Always recommend it to people if you want a super fun Christian read that gives you a lighthearted idea into all of these things. Next up is an honorable mention. I wanted to make one honorable mention before I go to my third book. There are so many honorable mentions on my shelves. I was tempted to get out more, but I decided that I will go with one. I think I would be interested in doing like a bookshelf tour later, or going through like some of my favorite books. I think if this is well received, which some of my reviews on things like the Left Behind series have actually been really well received on the channel too, which I'm going to be continuing, by the way, at some point when I can get to it. I'm trying to read a lot now that I'm out of college. Now that I'm graduated, I have been trying to get more into reading casually a lot and getting out of my theological textbooks and reading more of some of the things that I want to read. And so that has been difficult. This book actually has a sticker on it. I'm going to try to pick it off right now. Can't believe I haven't done this earlier. Boom. I ripped a sticker off clean. You love when you get a sticker off clean. You ever rip a sticker off a book and it leaves all that residue on it? That's the worst. Here's our honorable mention book. It is once again, I'm ashamed to say, C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis's second most famous book, arguably. I mean, other than his fiction, these are C.S. Lewis's nonfiction, not his fiction. His fiction books would be a topic for a whole nother conversation. I guess this is kind of fiction, but not in the same as like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, obviously, the Chronicles of Narnia. But this is obviously the Screwtape Letters, a most obvious glimpse into what it might look like for a person to have a devil trying to tempt them. And more valuably, what this book actually speaks to is how simple temptation can be. That is what this book is all about. How people can go to church and still be tempted by the devil and still be in the devil's will and not Christ's. How people can be pursuing religion and still be in the devil's will and not Christ. How people can be a good person but still be in the devil's will and not Christ's. So again, brilliant. It has the humor of C.S. Lewis. It has the charm of C.S. Lewis. Really, you could take just about any C.S. Lewis book. I mean, The Abolition of Man, The Four Loves. There are some really other good ones. The Problem of Pain. Any other C.S. Lewis book could be in my honorable mention category, but Screwtape Letters is probably the second most famous, and I think it is another one that I would say just like every person should read. The Screwtape Letters it's an excellent book, and I really love it. And so I wanted to make honorable mention for it. Before we get to the last book, this is the book which I have talked about on the channel a lot, and it has influenced a lot of the early content on my channel. And for that, it has to be mentioned because one of the most important things I think of our time is recovering the spiritual worldview that Christianity has lost. And so therefore, I think that it's one of the most important things I do is to get people to engage with that spiritual worldview, to understand the reality of angels and demons and the spiritual worldview of the spirit world going on around us, and how things matter spiritually, not just physically and not simply, and how we have to recover that. And so because of that, we of course have The Unseen Realm by the late Michael Heiser, who just passed away a few years ago. May he rest in peace. He was a brilliant author and is the pioneer of what is called the unseen realm, divine counsel worldview, which is, in his own words, recovering the supernatural worldview of the Bible. This is a dense book. This is a big read. If you have no theological knowledge, if you haven't read Apologetic, this could be too dense for you. It is big and it is thick and it has a lot of information. It's got a lot of scholarly citations. It has a companion website where you can go and get even more scholarly citations. But this has information on his biblical view recovered from old theologians and old early first century Jewish thought from before the time of Christ, engaging with what they thought about the spiritual world, who Satan is and who the demons are and who the fallen angels are and who the giants are, and like what is all this supernatural weird stuff that the modern like evangelical church might not want to talk to you about. What is all this stuff? Where does it come from? What does it actually mean? That is what he writes about in this book. Now, it's worth mentioning, like I said, if this is too dense for you, if it's too much for you, this copy, I think this is the typical copy, it's about 400 pages, but each page, as you can see, is almost like a scholarly book if you've read scholarly books, or if you've read like old poetry or something, where you'll have like half the page is the content of the page, and then down here is all footnotes. This is footnotes. So if that's the kind of read, you don't have to read the footnotes, I suppose, but he gives you a lot of extra scholarly information in the footnotes if you read them. But my point being, he has a less scholarly version of this, which is called Supernatural. And it is essentially the same book, but it is condensed down for the layman. And I have not read it, but that is what he said it is. He said it is the same book, but condensed down to be easier to read. It is half as long and contains the same stuff, but has it summarized and does not have near the footnotes and citations and things like that. So if the unseen realm is too much for you, then I would encourage you to look into Supernatural, because it is important for you as a Christian to know the reality of the spiritual world, and I believe that very importantly. So those right now are my first 3 book recommendations for you. If you are a Christian, if you are entering into the concepts of apologetics and theology, if you want to learn more, if you want to read deeper things and stuff like that, those are my 3 recommendations to you right now. We could get into whole other veins of books in philosophy, in fiction, in non-Christian, and I might be interested in talking more about some books and things on the channel that have made a big impact on me. But as you may know from the channel, I'm really passionate about entertainment. I'm really passionate about books and movies and TV and games, and all of those things are part of the passion that God has given me, and I have chosen to interact with those things through my YouTube channel in a lot of ways. And so I really wanted to talk about some of my favorite books. And so I hope that you found this interesting. I hope that those books are not too over recommended for you. But if you've been recommended any of these books 100 times and have not yet read them, then this is your sign that you need to go and read them now. So this has been Crean's Questions. I thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in more content from me, consider liking, subscribing, and following along with the channel. We are simply just on a walk of faith together. I am not an authority. I'm not a pastor, and I am not a doctor or a teacher. I am just someone who's exploring my own thoughts, my own knowledge, my own schooling, my own desire to learn more. I like talking to people. I like learning new things. I like going through deep ideas and thoughts and concepts and analyzing them carefully. And I'm essentially just asking questions. That's why the channel is called Crean's Questions. And I would just ask you if you want to come along with me to consider doing so. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your time. And I really thank you very much for watching.